Hey guys, today's episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our friends at Compassion International. They've been partners now with us for multiple years, and we're so glad to have them aboard with what we're doing here at Sports Spectrum, but we want to be on board with what they're doing, releasing children from poverty. Go check out compassion.com/sports spectrum, and you'll see a list of children there, some waiting for more than 670 days. When you think about that, that's more than almost 2 years, really, of kids waiting to be released from poverty. Places like Indonesia and Honduras and Ghana and Ecuador, Nicaragua. I mean, these are kids, young kids. We're talking 6, 7, 8 years old, and they look so beautiful when you look at them and you see them on the website. They're waiting for an opportunity. They're waiting for a chance, and you can help be that opportunity. You can help be that chance for them by sponsoring a child through Compassion International. And your support provides medical checkups, which in many cases saves a ton of lives. We're talking about nutritious food, health and hygiene training, and hearing about Jesus Christ. That's the most important thing. Compassion International is the real deal. Want to encourage you to check out the website, compassion.com/sports spectrum, and pray about sponsoring a child and releasing a child from poverty today.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And welcome everyone to the show. I am Jason. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. My email, jason@sportsspectrum.com. You can email me directly if you have a guest idea, a show topic you want us to cover, maybe a story on our website, or you just want to provide some feedback about today's interview. You can email me directly, jason@sportsspectrum.com. And of course, our website, which is a great place to go every single day for free content, updated daily devotionals, podcasts, articles, and stories. Great resources, all available for free at our website, sportsspectrum.com. Today on the show, Mark Appel returns to Sports Spectrum's podcast. Mark was the former number 1 overall draft pick by the Houston Astros back in 2013, played his college ball at Stanford, where he excelled. In 2012, he was the Pac-12 Scholar Athlete of the Year and the NCAA National Pitcher of the Year. He actually turned down an opportunity to be selected by Pittsburgh in 2012 in the first round, came back, and it proved to be a good decision. He was the number 1 overall pick by the Astros in 2013, signing a $6 million signing bonus when he was drafted. Played in the Futures game in MLB in 2015. Guys like Michael Conforto and Aaron Judge played in that game. He was traded in December of 2015 to the Phillies. And in 2018, having never reached the major leagues, he stepped away from baseball at the age of 26. Well, this past year, in 2021, Mark returned to pitch in 23 games, 15 with Double-A Reading and a bunch of games with the Triple-A affiliate at Lehigh Valley as well with the Philadelphia Phillies. So Mark made a decision to return to baseball after being away a couple years and chase that Major League Baseball dream. And he's now 30 years old. Will that dream be achieved? What was the reasoning behind coming back after a few years, and how important was his faith in making this decision? And will he pitch in 2022? These are questions that I asked Mark Appel. We had a fantastic conversation. We talked a lot about faith and trust in God's plan. And he actually had a viral social media post as well that took place last year that we go through and talk about as well. Mark Appel is our guest here, pro baseball pitcher on Sports Spectrum. What's up, Mark?
Hey, what's up, Jason?
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
Pretty good. Yeah,
Good to connect with you. Always good to see you in person.
It always feel like I've had the pleasure of knowing you for probably 5 or 6 years now. And, it's always great seeing you.
Always good to see you too. And we get to see each other at a conference, which is really cool. A conference that focuses on faith and and bring some guys together. And it's a really neat conference to be at. But I'm always fascinated because we do get to talk to people in person about how God's working in their life. The last time we had you on, you had stepped away from baseball in 2018. You were only 26 then. You now hit the big 3-0.
Gosh, don't remind me.
Wait till you get to 40, buddy. But you were back this year playing baseball. You went through the system with AA. You were still with the Phillies, and you were in Reading, and then you were in Lehigh Valley. And all of a sudden, I started looking, and I was like, "Wait, Mark Appel's back pitching." What went into that decision?
Yeah, when I left back in 2018, there was just a lot going on in my life. I think I was kind of drained in a lot of areas physically. Obviously, I'd spent years battling injuries. I think emotionally, being away from family, and spiritually, I think a lot of those things kind of intertwine with one another. And and I think even with COVID now, it's like we live in a world filled with isolation and loneliness, and our spirits are, I think they thrive in community and in fellowship and relationship. First and foremost, relationship with God, but relationship with others too. And so I was craving that back in 2018 when I left, and I left knowing that I still love baseball, but when you're hurt, you aren't able to go and perform, and I don't love just sitting and doing rehab every day and having all this time away from family and friends, and just not feeling like working really hard and not feeling like I'm making any progress. It was just exhausting. So I knew I needed a break, and I'm really glad that I made that decision. But probably 10 months after that decision, in October of 2018, I decided to have surgery on my shoulder. And from that point, I said, I want to play again. I want to have another opportunity to go out and perform, and to do it with good health.
Yeah.
And so that was the goal when I set out to do that, and I knew it was going to be a long road. And that's why I decided to do it in Houston with family and friends, and being a part of a church, and just having I think a really stable foundation of community, and just like routines, which I think a lot of people don't realize when you're playing sports. Like, routines are very hard to maintain, especially in the minors, where you're traveling, and you're playing at home, then on the road, and you get traded, you get called up, you sent down.
The only routine is that there is no routine.
Exactly. That's the one constant, is that there's no constant. Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
Oh, so you come back, and it had to be a pretty neat feeling to put on a uniform again, to be in a clubhouse, albeit the minors. Obviously, everybody would say, "Oh, I'd love to be in the majors," but in some ways, that's Mark's story, right? That's your story. It's not going to be the easy way. This is going to be the hard way, and you're back in a clubhouse. And from what I saw, I don't remember if you pitched in. Did you pitch in spring training and go through that whole process back in February and March of 2021?
It was weird. It was weird this past season because with COVID, a lot of this is the first full season for the minors. Minor league did not play at all in 2020.
Right.
And so there's just a lot of rules, especially as the vaccine started to get rolled out. And so the major league spring training happened from mid-February through March, like normal, but the minor league spring training started right after the major league spring training finished.
Right.
So it didn't happen simultaneously. So I didn't show up to Florida till right at the end of March, and then went through a whole minor league spring training, which was great. It was in some ways very familiar because I was back with the Phillies and in the same clubhouses. A number of the same faces were there, but in another way, it was very different because I was actually able to compete and perform in all the activities we were doing, and feel like I was just part of the system again, which was really fun for me, being in the clubhouse and talking to the guys and going through the struggle of all the work that we do, and being able to bond over that. It was really fun.
And then you got called up. You pitched for about a month, I saw, and you were in Reading.
Right.
You didn't make the trip to Hartford, by the way. If you
No.
had, I would have been there, and I would have come and seen you. But you didn't make the trip to Hartford, but you then go to Lehigh Valley for the Iron Pigs,
That's right.
Which is the AAA affiliate of the Phillies. So you're one step away from the show. And that's actually when you last pitched in 2017. That was your last time that you had pitched.
That's right.
Right? Was with Lehigh. So what was that like, kind of returning to the place you were 4 years later?
Yeah. I mean, it was almost 4 years to the date. My last game in Lehigh in 2017 because I was hurt, and then my first game back in 2021. So it was awesome. I mean, Phillies fans are spirited and they show up for their teams, and so it's great to, even just receive the support because by then people had heard and they follow their minor league system. So just hearing kind words from people in the fans, even as I was walking out to stretch and all that stuff, was just really, I don't know, it's like just such an encouragement to me, and then just being part of the clubhouse again, and just around the guys. And that's one thing I love is I love building relationships with my teammates. And it was, like I said, in some ways really, really familiar, and in other ways really foreign, because it had been so long since I had been back. But at the end of the day, it's like I'm still there to compete and still there to go out and try to get better as a baseball player. And so I felt like I was able to do that this year, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, it was awesome when I was reading the story. I'm like, all right, Mark's back playing and pitching, and I root for the guys who I know. And when you meet someone and you see that they're competing, you're trying to do well, you root for them. I root for them, and I want to see them do well too. And then my birthday happened, and you might be like, well, what's your birthday, Romano? It's September 17th, 2021 this past year. I'm just on Twitter, and thankfully there's a lot of people who were wishing a happy birthday and all that, and I always try to respond. And then on my timeline pops up Mark Appel 26, and I start reading it, and I'm just going to read the first tweet,
which has a typo, by the way.
Which has a typo. That's okay. We're reading
before the Twitter edit. Yeah,
you don't need to edit on the podcast what you type, but I'll read it. You said, in 2013, I was the number 1 overall pick in the MLB draft. 5 years later, I was called, quote, the biggest bust in MLB history. Today, I'm working my way back, and I'm here to share both the hard-earned lessons I've learned along the way. And then you shared these lessons. And it was fascinating because this thing started to take on a life of its own in Twitter world, which tends to happen, and it goes viral, and it gets a ton of retweets and a ton of likes. I think it had 28,000 likes. And you're probably hearing from a lot of people, those that you may know, and some, probably many that you don't. And I just thought it was fascinating. Before we go into some of the lessons, because I think a lot of the lessons that you tweeted out will come into play with just the flow of the conversation and where God has you.
Yeah.
But what prompted you at that moment to kind of share that? Like, was that spontaneous, or was that something that you had been praying about and thinking about over the previous weeks?
Yeah, I think, I turned 30 in the middle of July, and I think just 30 is one of those ages where you're like, a lot of self-reflection. Who am I? Sure. What's going on? And I was like, at the end of the day, I was like, if you take a snapshot of my 30th, I'm playing minor league baseball, in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. And so it just a lot of self-reflection. Yeah. And I think just realizing, man, there's a lot of lessons that I feel like God's taught me through baseball. I enjoy sharing those. I'm always really self-conscious about sharing my story because, I don't know. I don't think that my story is like any more special or unique than anyone else's. Like, sure, everyone has a story. So I guess I get to the point where it's like, what makes mine worth sharing? But I'm encouraged, and people encourage me to share it because it is a unique story. And, hopefully my goal in sharing it was just that it would encourage someone somewhere. And, one of my buddies had been on Twitter, and kind of re-sparked his Twitter engagement and interest. And I was talking to him about it, maybe a week before I posted it. And he was like, yeah, like, telling me all these like amazing things that social media is, I guess, brought to his life. And I'm very skeptical of social media in general.
Sure.
I've been off of it for 5-6 years. But I was like, you know what? If it's a story worth sharing and I can do it in a pretty easy fashion, like Twitter, then, I think I have a few tidbits that, let's see if it clicks with someone or resonates with someone. And it seemed like it did.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly did. First of all, I think that day I may have looked at when you first posted it, how many followers you had. And I looked recently and it was like 15,000 now.
Yeah.
I may be wrong on this, but didn't you start with like a couple thousand? Didn't you get like a boatload of
I literally,
from that?
I had deleted my Twitter account from, back
So it was basically nothing.
2013. This was the first tweet that I did on the new account.
And you got 15,000
yeah,
followers off
I
it.
mean, you can look at the tweet activity. I mean, it's crazy just the power of the internet.
Yeah.
And like I'm looking at this and yeah, it says it's had 6.5 million impressions, like, which is times people saw this tweet on Twitter.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's just like showing up on someone's timeline. It's just, it's pretty crazy. Just how, with the internet and with a medium like Twitter, you can, just share something at a whim, whether it's long premeditated or something very quick, and it can get spread all across the world. So.
Mark Appel is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. You put this tweet out September 17th, 2021. It goes viral, but you tweeted, I counted, I could be wrong on this, I believe it's 11 lessons that you wanted to share. On that, maybe you just were tweeting whatever the lessons were.
Yeah.
I think it might have been 12 tweets, but it was basically 11 lessons.
Right. Yeah.
That you shared.
And the typo is it says to share both the hard-earned lessons. I think in my draft I had said both like the hard-earned and humorous, and I was like, most of these aren't that humorous, so let me delete that. But
thankfully, Twitter is a forgiving place because
it
wouldn't have gone viral. I mean, in most places, but in Twitter, you can have a typo and who cares?
For
People
sure.
don't care.
And I say that to say there's more than 2 lessons here.
Yes.
So
there's more than 2. There's
Yeah.
11 as far as I counted. But I want to go through a few of these if you don't mind and kind of just maybe talk about what you were thinking. I mean, you shared a little bit in the lessons on each tweet, but, that's a tweet. 140, 280 characters.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
We're able to kind of go a little bit deeper. The first thing that stood out was the very first thing you wrote, which was talent finds a way. Don't worry about who's watching. And I'm thinking, that's a really fascinating lesson that it'll find. If you're good enough, it'll work out. Don't worry about who's watching you.
Yeah.
Why that lesson?
Yeah. So I think that one stood out because a lot of, just being at a local gym, working out or whatever, it's like anytime I meet someone and they have kids that are baseball players, like, how do I get my kid to college, or how do I get my kid to, to the pros or whatever it may be. And I always tell them, it's like, incorporate or try to teach hard work and developing skills that are going to get you to the next spot. And sometimes those skills you develop through playing games. It's not just drills, right? But is it worth it to, go and spend all this money to go to all these showcases and events? So like, yeah, maybe you have more exposure and you might increase your chance. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like, do you want to be, a kid who's playing, every day at a great school, or do you want to be a kid who's just riding the bench somewhere because you got all this exposure from these showcases. So, and developing that at a young age, I think, is super important because it does transition to college and the next levels to work hard and to keep developing your skills. So that's really where that came from, but it was specific in my story because I love playing basketball in high school too. So I never did the summer circuit for baseball. I never went to all these showcases. I worked hard and tried to get better, but I wasn't concerned about who I was being put in front of.
Yeah.
And I think it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, 2012 NCAA National Pitcher of the Year, #1 overall pick. That worked out For sure. The next one was interesting. Tell someone you believe in them. It goes a long way. And you talked about a team captain calling a player meeting your freshman year and how that helped you. That's so important, and we forget that. And I think that's life. It's not just sports. Like, this is a lesson in many ways that you've learned that help us in life, not just if for that aspiring athlete who wants to become great. We're talking about just encouraging someone.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's encouragement. And, encouragement, I love that word, because if you think about it, it literally means filling someone with courage, right? And courage, you need courage to do things that you might feel insecure about doing or might not know if you can go do them. So what it does in a way is it speaks, it truthfully speaks into someone's life to let them understand their potential so that they can go and live in, the reality that might not yet be there. And I think that's really important, because if you look at a player and you just take a snapshot of who that player is and what their skills are, and you say, well, you just don't have it, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, you're throwing 85 miles an hour in high school. You just don't have it, right? It's like, no, you need people that are there, like, letting you know, it's like, yes, even though you're throwing 85 right now, you should have every reason to have confidence that you can throw harder or you can be a better player. Yeah. And like, you need to work harder. And sometimes you just need someone to, like, have that faith for you and to instill that confidence in you, until it becomes your own, And I think there's so many parallels with the gospel too. It's like, that's how we, evangelize and telling people about the realities of their life and a God who loves them, even though they may not understand that until it becomes real in their own life and it changes their life.
Yeah, that's so good. The next one was opportunity comes when you least expect it. Be ready. And be ready is biblical. I know in 1 Peter 3, Scripture says to always be prepared, to give a reason for the hope that's within you. So even from a faith standpoint, we are to be prepared and be ready. But from a talent standpoint, opportunity comes when you least expect it. Be ready.
Yeah.
Before you go into that, I want to share, because my nephew is that high school football senior who just finished his journey through high school football, and he had a really good senior year down in Florida, all conference, got his team to the state championship, lost by 1 point, heartbreaking loss in the title game for Mount Dora Christian Academy here. Caleb is his name, but he's kind of waiting right now because he wants to play football in college, and he's doing what he kind of needs to do in some cases, the showcase stuff potentially, posting on social media, getting people his tape. But there's part of this that we've told him, just be ready, because it's going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's the encouragement I think about when you share that. Tell me about that and why you shared it.
Yeah, well, the little anecdote that I shared in the tweet was talking about my sophomore year at Stanford, and I was pegged to be the number 2 starter, and our Friday night starter has a freak accident, slices his finger open, and 2 weeks before the season, and he's out for the whole year, right? And so it's like, all right, well, Mark, you're now the number 1. And that year we had just an incredible, the Pac-12 was stacked with teams, and then our non-conference games were against, Vanderbilt and University of Texas and Rice and just like some powerhouse college baseball schools. And so I stepped into this as a sophomore after having a rough freshman year, but now as the number 1 starter, and I worked hard and prepared, and I was ready. I still had insecurities, and I still wasn't sure, like, do I stack up? By the end of that year, it's like I knew that I was good enough to compete with the best of the best in college baseball. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity unless I was ready when my name was called. And I think there's just so many applications, whether it's sports or business or relationships or whatever it may be. Another way that people have kind of talked about this point is, success happens gradually than suddenly, right? It's like, it feels like you're making slow progress, but then all of a sudden something happens, an opportunity comes, and it just seems like you're on a rocket ship. And I think that is, I think, a testament to the months and the years of hard work to prepare yourself for that, that one moment. And I think that one moment in people's lives, I don't think there's just one moment. It's like, if you miss a moment, I think a lot of people, sometimes we feel like we can have guilt or regret. It's like, moments come all the time, and they might even come every day. And so just understanding is like, hey, if you missed a moment, it's no big deal,
right?
Learn from it and be ready for the next one.
Yep, because another one will come. I love what you wrote after that. You said it's your career, and you can always say no. And that definitely pertains to your journey because of a couple opportunities when you were picked and selected, and you just decided not to go and made that decision. But that's a nice reminder for all of us that we need to own up our lives. We don't always have to be yes people, especially believers. I think it's really hard for Christians to say no. But I think sometimes we have to be able to say no for the yes to happen, the right yes to happen.
Absolutely.
You shared that. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I mean, I had an opportunity to start my pro career after my junior year, and life-changing money was on the table, and I said no. Still probably criticized by some people in Pittsburgh for that decision. But at the end of the day, the decisions you make you're the only one that's going to have to live with them. And so for whatever reason you make the decisions that you make, no one's forcing you to do anything. And I think when you realize that, you have the freedom to kind of take ownership and say, you know what, even if I'm passing on an opportunity that may seem great and everyone says I'd be crazy not to take, I can say no for the reasons that I have conviction in, and be good with that and have peace about that. And I think a lot of times, and I still struggle with this, is trying to make decisions that other people approve of or think are a good decision in my life, And sometimes I can lean too much on other people's counsel, thinking, oh, I'm seeking wise counsel, right? And really, I'm just like offloading the decision to other people and trying to make decision by committee for a decision that God's probably given me deep convictions about. Just I'm either suppressing them or scared about maybe the consequences that might come, whether it's public criticism or whatever it may be. But I think when you have that conviction, and if it leads you to say no to something, it very well could be because you have an opportunity to say yes to something greater down the road.
And that happened to you. You came into a lot of money as a number one pick. I was thinking this isn't one of the lessons per se, but it must have been fascinating going from being a successful college player, and suddenly you haven't really accomplished anything other than being selected number one overall, which is a great accomplishment. Yeah. But I mean, you haven't pitched a professional game yet.
Right.
And you're into becoming a millionaire. Like, you're a millionaire at your early 20s. What was that like to kind of have a lot of money really quickly and feel like you hadn't even done anything yet other than what you had earned, during that time in college?
Yeah. And I think that's how I saw it, is like the work that I did in college, in a way earned that opportunity. It was weird. It was weird, being in a place where, even some guys in the big leagues, like in the organization that I was in, maybe they didn't sign for as much and they're making $500,000 a year,
right?
And so it's like, just for what I signed, it's like some guys have been working like really, really hard and for really, really long, to earn that type of money. And I was both like really, really thankful and understood that it was just a pure blessing. But also, it's weird because it's like, it's a privilege to be able to be in that position, but like, there's no sense in being like ashamed of that or feel like you're, just because you feel like you've kind of you have the silver spoon, or you know, your right arm's the geese that laid the golden egg.
Yeah.
That you have to owe something to someone else. But I approached my minor league career, you know, especially with the Astros. Like, I had the utmost respect for the front office and for the ownership team, because they made a huge investment in me, and I worked every single day to try to return and repay that investment. Because, you know, I really believed in what we were building with the Astros, and really believed in, you know, giving my all every single day.
Sure.
You know, and I would have done that even if they didn't sign me for a lot of money. But I think it just added a little bit of extra weightiness and expectation to it.
It's just weird to be in a profession where everybody knows how much money you make in your career. Nobody knows how much money I make in my career. It's certainly not what you got for that bonus, that's for sure. But everybody knows what like, even right now, as we're recording this and free agents are signing and people are signing for hundreds of millions of dollars. It's so bizarre. And I mean, maybe it's just kind of par for the course or comes with the territory of being a professional athlete, but everybody knows how much you made or how much that signing bonus was. Mm-hmm. That's got to be, I don't know. Was that something that you just kind of shook your shoulders and said, okay, that's just part of the game? Because everybody does know what you were making.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that you just have to learn how to deal with. It's like everyone just knows it. And the thing that I care more about is the relationship that I have with my teammates and with my coaches. So
that's good.
I think because of where I was signed, or where I signed, how much I signed for, like, any time in the minors that, like, I've, especially early after the draft, anytime I, you know, go into a locker room, it's like people already have preconceived notions about me because of all these things, right? And they've never even met me. And that's the thing that I struggled with the most, because at the end of the day, I'm just Mark.
Right.
It's like,
you're just trying to do the best you can, just like we all are.
Pat and Sandra are my parents, and John's my brother, and it's like I'm the same guy, you know, who grew up with, you know, working and playing, and, you know, working hard and playing 2 sports, and you know, studying and being part of my local church, and, you know, doing all these crazy things, and it's like I'm still the same guy.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't really changed me. I think it's added some, like, responsibilities, and there's probably even been some, like, anxieties that have come with it, because it's like I want to steward it well, and want to invest in things that I think are kingdom things. And so, it just, you know, it just adds a layer of complication to what was up until that point a pretty simple life. So.
Well, lastly, as we wind down, and thanks for playing along here with us with your tweet, but I just think it was such a great tweet, and it resonated for a reason, because there's a lot of people that are going through a lot of different things. And one of the things that you tweeted that really stood out to me was you wrote, "It's okay to not be okay." We hear that a lot, you know, oh, okay, it's okay to not be okay. But there's a real truth to that, I think. With so many of us who have our moments, some of us struggle deeper than others with different things like anxiety, depression, whatever, or some of us just have a bad day or a bad season of life. And you just put it out there that it's a nice reminder for many of us to know that sometimes we're not going to be okay, and that is all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we can have, like, learn how to have peace with our brokenness, but, like, disclaimer, I think that only comes through Christ. Like, true peace in our brokenness comes through Christ.
Yes.
We're able to start moving forward, you know, and to be able to, like, I think there's just an expectation, especially in American culture, in our society, that people have their lives together. You know, it's very, I think, social media fueled. You know, is your life Instagrammable? Is your life, you know, are you tweeting the most wise and profound things, or the wittiest and funniest things?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, there's just this, like, very put togetherness that we expect from ourselves and other people when we go out in public. And in reality, everyone's struggling with something. And I think a lot of times we ignore that, and we try to, you know, pretend it's not there. And I think the way for us to move forward is to like accept it and, almost lean into it and say like, man, I am kind of a screw up. I do have issues. Like my life hasn't gone like I expected or wanted. I do have like pain and sorrow, I like all of these things are very evident in my life. But like, how do I move on? Like, and how do I move through that well? And I think it's only in Christ. But part of that is getting to that point where you're like, hey, I'm going to be okay. And it's okay that I don't have my life together in the way that everyone thinks that I do, or the way that I think everyone else does.
I think it takes getting to that point for a lot of people to understand we can't save ourselves. That's the whole point of, in many ways, this whole thing about Jesus that we're talking about, is that none of us, I don't care how successful you are, how many followers you have on Instagram, how much money you make, how great everything seems to be, on your social media pages, or even in some of the people that you meet, how wonderful your life is. We all are lost without Jesus, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's just a good reminder there. My last question to you: Do you want to pitch again? Do you want to make another go at this at this pro baseball thing and maybe try to get to the show? What are you thinking? What you're thinking here as we record this?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm figuring that out right now. I think there's a lot of factors that like priorities that have just like changed in my life, right? Over the last 9-10 years since I signed back in 2013. So relationships are everything to me, right? And so playing is really hard on relationships, but you can't play forever, right? And so you only have a small window to do this. And so like, what's the balance between going and chasing a dream versus like starting the rest of your life with the people that you love? And so, I'm kind of battling that right now and trying to figure out, is it worth it to go out for another season or not? I'm really proud that I got through last season healthy. That was the goal. I think at the end of the day, I just want to have peace and closure about my career and all the good and bad that's happened in my baseball career. And I think once I have closure, I think I'll be really, really happy to move on. And I may have closure between now and next spring. It may take, maybe going to spring training and seeing how I feel early next season to do that. So we'll see. I'm obviously spending a lot of time praying about that, but
well, it's okay to not have the answers all the time either, right, Mark?
That's exactly right.
I don't know is actually a very okay answer. It's
100%.
Perfectly fine. So
100%.
Mark Appel, thanks, buddy. Thanks for catching up, sharing your story. 2021 was a lot of fun to watch for you, and we'll see where God takes you in 2022.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
And many thanks to Mark Appel for being here on Sports Spectrum. We got to tape that in person at a conference down in Florida, and that was just a blessing to be able to tape any interview and record any conversation in person. And I hope that you enjoyed Mark's candor. I hope that you felt his heart for Jesus, and I think he's really not sure if he's going to pitch again. I hope he does, and I really hope he gets one shot, just one game where he can pitch in the big leagues, because I know that's something that he dreams about and would like to do. But I also know that's not his identity, and if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen, and he's secure in his faith in Jesus, and that's the most important thing. And he's got a lot of options for other opportunities, as he's had before he returned to pitching. And I'm sure Mark Appel, wherever he ends up, will be very successful with Christ leading in front for Mark's journey. So we appreciate him being here today on Sports Spectrum. We are the intersection of sports and faith, and you are awesome because you tuned in to listen to today's podcast. We do appreciate you. A couple things before we say goodbye. If you could go to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's a place to bookmark every day, by the way, because there's new content updated there, and it really is a place for great resources, articles and stories that you can share with your friends and family, with your people in church or people in small groups or maybe some of your peers in whatever sports industry that you work in, sportspectrum.com is a great place to bookmark. But when you're there, there's now a place where you can sign up and receive our daily devotionals to your email inbox. And I don't know about you when you do your devotionals, but having one every single day sent to my email is a great reminder to get in God's word. Now, I have my sort of disciplines and my routine that I do every single day with my walk with God, but having that email sent each morning is a great reminder. He said, don't forget about making sure you get that time with God and spending that time in your devotional. And so if you'd like to sign up, it's really easy. You can go to the website, sportspectrum.com, click on the devotionals tab, and then put your email address in, and you can receive our Sports Spectrum daily devotional each morning, Monday through Friday, come directly to your email inbox. Again, the website, sportspectrum.com. Thanks for listening. We really do appreciate you guys. On the way out, click that subscribe button, that follow button on whatever app you're listening to Sports Spectrum on so that you never miss an episode. And then tune in next time right here on Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your day.